My name's Natalie Pierce. I'm 27. And that lunch? It was the last time I ever let them speak to me like that. The white linen tablecloth did nothing to soften the slap of my mother's words. I gave your sister $1.7 million, she said casually, plucking a cherry tomato off her overpriced salad. It was a better investment. You're still finding yourself, right? Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My hand froze midair over my iced tea. My lips twitched, not in surprise, but restraint. Across from me, my father leaned back, arms folded over his polo shirt like he was a guest of honor at some victory banquet. Some people just don't have the spark, he chuckled. No shame in that. But it's time you start contributing. You can't live in that guest house for free forever. Mom reached into her purse, pulled out a trifold paper, and slid it across the table. A rent invoice.
Signed.
I looked at both of them, my own parents, giddy with themselves. Giddy at the thought of squeezing rent money from the daughter, who cooked their dinners, mowed their lawn, and hadn't asked for a thing in years. I took a slow breath and smiled. You're right, I said. It's time I started contributing. Just not to this table anymore. Their smug expressions twitched, just a little. You're being dramatic, my mom scoffed. But I was already rising from my seat. The waiter approached, and I handed him my credit card before my dad could stop me. Put the whole meal on this, I said. It's the last one I'll be having with them. He looked at my parents. They said nothing. Not a protest. Not a thank you. As I stepped out into the parking lot, the late afternoon sun hit my face like a spotlight.
Warm.
Blinding. Freeing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even text my sister, who I knew was probably sipping champagne in her golden glass salon downtown, funded by the people who couldn't spare a dime for me. I drove. I drove until the palm trees disappeared and downtown LA blurred into low-rises and warehouses. My fingers tapped the steering wheel in rhythm, brain buzzing, not with anger. Anger was easy, but with a sharp, electric kind of clarity. They thought I was nothing. An artist without direction. A dreamer who painted walls and watched YouTube tutorials. Who once turned down a scholarship to Parsons to stay home and take care of my grandmother when Mom didn't want to. I remembered that year. I remembered bathing Grandma, reading to her, watching her forget who I was day after day, while my sister vacationed in Santorini and my parents managed their investments. They said I had no spark. They were wrong. That night, I opened my laptop in my tiny studio apartment. The walls were bare drywall, but they were mine. The coffee was cheap, but it was strong. And the fire in my chest had never burned brighter. I pulled up the branding files I'd been designing for months. I'd been silent for too long, waiting for approval I never needed, holding my breath. But that night, I let it go. I bought the domain, designed the storefront, pulled every commission piece I had from the art accounts I ran anonymously. I scheduled my launch for Friday. Pierce Prints, I whispered to the empty room. Custom art. Limited run designs. Prints, murals, digital packages. I'd built it in the shadows of that guest house, after mowing their lawn, after reheating their dinners. Every click that night felt like a step out of their shadow. They thought they broke me at lunch. They had no idea. The next morning, my phone lit up with a message. From Ava. Mom said you stormed out. You okay? By the way, want to design the art wall at my salon? Could be a fun sister collab. I stared at it for a long second.
Delete.
Then came the call. Mom's voice sharp, already rehearsed. Natalie, your father and I want you to know we didn't mean to hurt your feelings. But you really should consider moving out soon. You're an adult. I let her talk. Let her fill the silence with half-hearted excuses. Then I said, I'm launching something this Friday. You should watch closely. You'll want to remember what I looked like before I made it.
Click.
Friday came like a thunderclap. I had barely slept, barely eaten. My hands were shaking when I hit publish on the site. I designed every image, coded the interface from scratch. I'd even used my last $300 to promote on 3 local platforms, targeting art collectors, design agencies, and home decorators. The orders started coming in. Then more. By 5 p.m., my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My prints were shared by a mid-tier interior influencer. Then a popular Twitch streamer bought my Grit and Glow mural set for his streaming wall and tagged me. By midnight, I'd sold out 3 collections. I was booked for 5 private commissions. And my digital storefront had over 80,000 hits. That weekend, I made more than I had in the last 4 months combined. By Monday, I had to hire 2 freelance assistants. By Thursday, I was signing a rental lease for my first studio loft in downtown LA. I was no longer the other daughter. I was Natalie Pierce, CEO, creative director, and the spark they said I never had. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because I hadn't told them. I wanted them to see it with their own eyes. Not through a screen. Not through my sister's filtered life. I wanted them to walk into it. And fall silent. Like I had so many times before. The silence was beautiful. I watched from behind the white curtain as they walked into the gallery, eyes blinking beneath the soft lighting. The space smelled like fresh paint and citrus, the walls lined with my latest collection. Bold, moody pieces titled The Forgotten Daughter. I hadn't invited them, but I made sure they'd be there. Ava came first, heels clicking on the polished floor, her hair in soft waves, camera already out. She thought it was just another gallery opening to add to her feed. Then Mom walked in, clutching her wine glass like a trophy. Then Dad, looking around, confused by the crowd of investors and well-dressed creatives murmuring praise over brush strokes and texture. They didn't recognize the name on the massive wall decal at first. Natalie Pierce, feature artist and founder of Pierce Print Studio. But when the owner of the gallery, a sharp woman named Clarice, shook my hand and announced me over the speaker, the air left the room. Their faces dropped. I stepped onto the small stage in a sleek navy jumpsuit. Nothing too flashy, but elegant.
Polished.
Confident. Gone was the girl who once flinched at their jabs over dinner. I looked right at them and smiled. "Is this your show?" Mom asked later, cornering me near the display wall that held my best-selling collection. The one titled Table for One, featuring a woman dining alone while shadows laughed behind her. I didn't answer immediately. I let her look closer at the plaque beneath it. Inspired by the last lunch I ever shared with people who said they loved me. A flush rose to her cheeks. She stepped back. "You could have told us," Dad grumbled. "You made us look stupid." "You told me I didn't have the spark," I said evenly. "Why would I share it with you before I knew it would ignite?" He blinked.
Said nothing.
But Ava did. "Okay, so you have an art thing now," she scoffed, eyes darting to the crowd that had gathered near my corner prints. "Don't act like it's some empire. This isn't Shark Tank." My eyes narrowed. That was always her problem. She only respected success when it came with applause. She only recognized value when someone else confirmed it first. "Actually," I said softly, "the mural I installed last week at the Fortune Tech HQ? It just got licensed for national campaign use. The deal closed yesterday." Her jaw slackened. I leaned in. They paid 6 figures for a 2-week turnaround. Ava froze. She opened her mouth, probably to fake a laugh, but I walked past her before she could recover. 2 days later, Ava's name appeared in my inbox. Subject: Urgent, sister favor. I let the message sit for hours. When I finally opened it, I found a long, winding email filled with sugary praise and fake warmth, ending with, "The salon's struggling. Traffic's down. We want to redesign the whole look, new murals, vibe, something powerful. Something you. I'd love for you to paint it. Your fee, of course. Let's help each other shine. Ava." I closed the email, laughed once, and clicked archive. Success didn't fix everything. That's what no one tells you. It doesn't erase the ache. It doesn't retroactively fix the years you gave, the moments they stole, the quiet tears cried into an empty pillow. And just when you think you're rising, you learn people will pull at you harder than they ever did, when you were still beneath them. I found that out the hard way 3 weeks later. My studio was humming. Bookings were full through the summer. I'd even partnered with 2 local nonprofits to design community art walls for shelters and rec centers. Then the email hit. Subject: legal notice. Allegation of trademark infringement. From a law firm representing Ava Pierce Enterprises, LLC. Apparently, she had preemptively registered Pierce Prints as a lifestyle salon and beauty goods brand the same week I launched. And now she was alleging brand confusion. She was trying to steal my name. I stared at the screen, heart thudding like a war drum. She hadn't succeeded in creating a name for herself, so she decided to take mine. I met with my lawyer that same day. Legally, he said, adjusting his glasses, it's a gray zone. You built this business under the Pierce Prints name. You've sold thousands of pieces. You have a digital trail, dated timestamps, client lists. But she filed the name under a different business category first. But she's the one trying to branch into my field, I argued. Art, murals, home design.
Exactly.
Well, fight it. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. But this will get ugly, Natalie. I nodded. I was ready for ugly. They'd called me the weak link. They forgot what happens when a chain finally snaps. Ava's next move was predictable and pathetic. She launched a limited salon product line called Pierce Prints, essential oils, wall diffusers, some Pinterest-looking wall art. She hosted an influencer event with pastel balloons and fake smiles and posted it everywhere with a caption. Family means building together. Like I was part of it. Like she hadn't just stabbed me in the back and twisted the blade. But she made one mistake. She thought my silence was weakness. She didn't realize silence was just my wind-up. The revenge wasn't loud. It was deliberate.
Precise.
I didn't make call-out posts or trash her publicly. I just did what she never expected. I built bigger. I rebranded quietly under my full name, Natalie E. Pierce Studios. And then I launched a new line called Unwritten Contracts. Every piece told the story of betrayal masked in family love. Paintings of daughters holding burning houses. Of girls holding their own names stitched back together from pieces. It went viral. TikTok, Reddit, Instagram Reels. People shared their own family betrayal stories in the comments. My store sold out in 11 hours. And then, a Forbes local impact article dropped. Headlined, "This LA artist turned family pain into a 6-figure art brand, and her work is just getting started." Her face wasn't mentioned once. But my name was everywhere. The morning Ava's salon went dark on social media, I knew something had cracked. No new posts. No curated boomerangs. No photo shoots in front of ring lights. Just silence. Then came the text from an old mutual friend. "Hey, did you see Ava's sponsor pulled out? Apparently, she missed payroll too." Yikes. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I did. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't gloating. It was a strange, quiet ache. A reminder that even revenge had its limits. That watching someone unravel, especially someone who shares your blood, doesn't fill the holes they once carved into you. But it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. That same week, I received a letter. Handwritten. In soft, loopy script I hadn't seen in years. From my grandmother. It had been buried deep in a box of art supplies I brought with me when I left my parents' house. I hadn't opened the box in over a year. But there it was. A sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside, just a single sheet of paper. "Natalie, my quiet girl with the bright hands. I know they don't see you. But I do. The day I changed my will, I told the lawyer not to call you mother. I told him to call you. Everything I saved gets for you. Because you stayed. Check the storage unit. 4218 Mulberry. The key is taped under the top drawer of my sewing desk." I froze. That sewing desk now sat in the corner of my studio, used to hold sketchbooks and ink bottles. I pulled open the top drawer, reached under, felt the cool metal of a taped key. The storage unit was old, dusty, the kind that felt like time had folded in on itself and decided to take a nap. But inside was proof. Bank documents. Certificates.
Stocks. Deeds.
She hadn't just left me a few trinkets. She'd left me everything. Her estate. Her art. A trust fund that hadn't been touched in over a decade. And a signed statement from her attorney, clearly indicating she'd bypassed her daughter, my mom, entirely. I stood there in the stillness, holding the papers, heart pounding with 1,000 memories. Her voice. Her wrinkled hands guiding mine over sketch pads. Her words. You have the kind of fire that doesn't shout. It just burns longer. They'd lied to me for years. Told me she left nothing. That she had forgotten everything before she passed. But they knew. They hid it. They stole it. That night, I didn't sleep. I gathered everything. Scanned the legal docs. Contacted the lawyer listed on the will, who confirmed every word. My mother had tried to keep me small, even after death. But Grandma had made sure I'd rise anyway. I posted a story on my art page, not calling names, not revealing family drama. Just a video of me unlocking the storage unit. Then flashes of the old paintings. The trust paperwork. And a quiet caption. Sometimes the people who gave you nothing were just hiding what was already yours. It exploded. Comments poured in, people sharing stories of being overlooked.
Betrayed.
Left out by their own blood. They didn't know it was about my mom. But she did. And she called me the next morning. Natalie, she began, her voice tight. Why are you dragging this into the public eye? I didn't name anyone, I said calmly. But if you feel exposed, maybe that's not about me. You don't understand what we went through, she snapped. We had plans. We were going to tell you. No, you weren't. I cut in. You were going to bury it with her. Just like you tried to bury me. Silence. Then, softly. I didn't think you'd make it, Natalie. My throat tightened. I know. She hung up. Later that day, Ava posted one last picture to her salon's account. A selfie. Face swollen from crying. No filters. No edits. Captioned. Turns out the sparkle they sold me wasn't real. But my sister? She built her own. It didn't make me feel better. But it made me feel seen. Maybe for the first time. It was supposed to be just a small art pop-up in San Diego. 3 walls. 2 assistants. 1 truck. But somehow, it became the event of the month. People lined up outside the converted warehouse before the doors opened. Some had flown in. Others wore t-shirts with my designs printed from Etsy knockoffs. A few even cried while standing beneath my newest mural. Inheritance of Silence. A woman painting her own name over one that had been crossed out. By the end of the weekend, a talent agency offered to represent me. A home decor brand wanted licensing rights. And a Netflix producer asked if I'd ever thought about turning my story into a documentary. I told them I'd think about it. But deep down, I knew something else had shifted. I was no longer someone trying to prove herself. I was the proof. The moment I knew the world had changed was when Dad showed up. Unannounced. At my downtown studio. He didn't even knock, just stood outside the glass front doors like he wasn't sure if he belonged. I walked over, hesitant. He looked smaller. Paler. Less sure of himself. I saw the Forbes article, he said. I waited. And your grandmother's will. Your mom told me everything. Still, I said nothing.
He sighed.
I thought I was protecting you by toughening you up. My jaw tightened. You weren't protecting me. You were shrinking me. He didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. He just looked at the walls around us, at the murals, the sketches, the inspiration boards. She'd be proud of you, he said softly. Your grandmother. That hit harder than I expected. She already was, I replied. He nodded. Then something unexpected. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a box. A wooden one. I found this after she passed. Your mom never let me give it to you. Inside was a necklace. Simple. A gold pendant shaped like a paintbrush, small enough to be missed, heavy enough to matter. She bought it for you after you got into Parsons, he said. Said she'd give it to you on your first gallery show. I stared at the necklace for a long time. I didn't say thank you. But I didn't throw it away either. Days passed. Then weeks. And something strange began happening. Ava stopped posting completely. Instead, she started working.
She showed up at small community events.
Volunteered at mural installations. Didn't tag herself. Didn't beg for photos. Just worked. Quietly. One afternoon, she walked into my studio with paint on her jeans. "You're the reason I even picked up a brush," she said, not looking at me. I was so obsessed with being seen, I forgot what it meant to see. She handed me a file folder. Inside was a letter of withdrawal. She dissolved the business license under Pierce Prince. "Your name was never mine to take," she said and walked out. For the first time in years, I felt still. No noise. No proving. No chasing. Just presence. I poured myself into my biggest project yet, a gallery show titled The Blood That Didn't Bind. The pieces were raw, jagged, honest. Art about family and wounds and reclaiming identity. I invited Ava. And my father. But not my mother. That boundary stayed. She sent a bouquet anyway. I didn't send one back. On opening night, a girl approached me. Couldn't have been older than 19. She pointed to a canvas of a woman walking away from a burning table set for Thanksgiving. "I showed this to my mom," she whispered, "and told her I wasn't coming home this year." I blinked. She smiled. That painting gave me permission to stop shrinking too. In that moment, I realized the revenge was never the gallery, the money, the article, or the rebrand. It was freedom. Freedom from being small. From needing their approval. From explaining myself over and over to people who never really listened. And that was worth more than $1.7 million. 6 months passed. 6 months of creation, clarity, and silence. Not the painful kind. Not the one that made you wonder if you were invisible. This silence felt earned. Like peace. My brand was thriving. I had a small team now, young artists, mostly women, some queer, some from broken families. All of them brilliant. All of them overlooked at some point by someone who thought they weren't enough. Every time I walked through my studio, I saw pieces of myself mirrored in them. Their fire, their hunger, their quiet resilience. And I knew this was the spark my father said I never had. Then one morning, a call. It was Ava.
Her voice was calm.
Too calm. "Mom had a fall." I didn't speak. "She's okay," she added quickly. "Bruised hip. But she's asking for you." My throat closed a little. "I'm not coming to the hospital," I said. "She's at home now. She's different, Nat. I don't know how to explain it, but she's been going through all of Grandma's journals. I think she sees it now." My voice stayed level. "Some things can't be undone with a fall." "I know," Ava said softly. "But maybe they can be seen." 3 days later, I drove up to the house I once called home. Not to stay. Not to be welcomed back. But to reclaim the last thing I hadn't yet. Closure. Mom sat in the garden chair where Grandma used to knit, wrapped in a blanket. Her face looked older than I remembered. Less polished, more human.
"Natalie," she said.
I nodded. We sat in silence for a while. No words. No rehearsed apologies. Finally, she held something out. A folder. I read her journals.
"All of them," she said.
"She loved you. So much. I think I was jealous. For a long time." I opened the folder. Inside were photos, me as a child, painting with Grandma. Birthday cards. Sketches I'd thought were lost. And a letter in Grandma's handwriting labeled, "For my daughter, when she's ready to know why she lost her own." I handed it back. "I don't need that answer anymore," I said. She looked stunned. "Why?" "Because I stopped waiting for you to see me. I built a life without your validation. I made peace with the fact that I was never the investment you wanted." Her eyes watered. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel, but because I'd already done all my grieving years ago. I stood. Before leaving, I looked around the backyard one last time. The swing set was still there, rusted, crooked, and never repaired. Just like our relationship. A month later, I made one final move. I purchased a modest building near Echo Park and turned it into a community studio. Studio Spark, for girls who'd been told they weren't enough. For young artists who needed space, supplies, and someone to believe in them. I didn't name it after myself. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about every daughter who walked away from a table that never saw her worth. Every woman who rebuilt herself from dust and doubt. Every person who turned silence into fire. At the grand opening, my staff surprised me. They unveiled a mural on the back wall, one I didn't paint. It showed a girl, her face half in shadow, half in light. She held a match in one hand, and in the other, a mirror. Above it, a single phrase. You were the spark all along. And just like that, I smiled. No more revenge. No more proving. Just power.
And peace.
The room was filled with clinking glasses, expensive perfume, fake laughter, and not a single person I could genuinely call family. I stood near the cake, a cheap-looking two-tier mess with plastic frosting flowers. It had my name on it, Natalie, but no trace of love, just decoration for appearance. My mother had gone overboard pretending this whole birthday bash was her idea. It wasn't. She didn't even remember the date last year. 22 already. Uncle Mike grinned, his breath reeking of whiskey. Getting old, Nat. Got a real job yet, or still pretending to be a writer? My jaw clenched. I smiled thinly. Still pretending. Just like you're pretending you still have hair. His laughter barked out. You got your mother's sharp mouth. Mom, standing nearby in a tight beige dress and diamond earrings she never could have afforded, shot me a glare. Be polite. This party's not just about you, you know. Your grandfather is here. I bit my tongue. Grandpa Elias, the only reason anyone in this room behaved. The only person who ever saw me, really saw me, not as a failure, not as someone who owed them something, but as family. He entered the room exactly like he always did. Quietly, yet every head turned. The room shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even my father, who never bowed to anyone, stood straighter. Grandpa Elias didn't do loud. He didn't need to. His silence alone made people sweat. He walked toward me slowly, with that unreadable smile of his. Natalie, he said, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Thank you, Grandpa. My voice cracked slightly. Then he leaned in, voice soft. Is the apartment comfortable? My head tilted. What apartment? Dead silence. The music still played in the background, soft jazz, but it felt like it had faded miles away. My mom's glass trembled in her hand. Dad shifted awkwardly, avoiding Grandpa's gaze. He straightened slowly, turning his full attention toward them. Then where, he asked, did the money go? Everyone stopped breathing. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. I thought we were waiting, Dad began, eyes darting. You said? I said nothing, Grandpa cut him off. I wired the money 3 months ago. Full down payment. I told you to have her moved in before her birthday. I stared at them, my stomach twisting. 3 months ago? I never heard anything about it, I said, heart pounding. I still live in the basement. It came out more pathetic than I wanted, but it was the truth. Mom stepped forward. She never told us she wanted to move out. She's been unstable lately. Unstable? I repeated, voice sharp. She fights with her sister. She barely talks to us, she continued, her voice high. And she didn't need an apartment. We thought it was better to hold on to the money for now, just in case Grandpa raised one hand. She fell silent like someone yanked the cord on a puppet. I gave you one instruction, he said calmly. Make sure she had her own space. You two promised me she'd get the apartment. And we were going to, Dad said, desperate now. But things got busy and... Don't, Grandpa said, his voice suddenly dangerous. Insult my intelligence. A few of the relatives quietly slipped away from the living room, pretending to look interested in the buffet or patio view. I could feel the heat of eyes on us. Grandpa turned to me. Do you want to leave? I blinked. What? He looked at me with eyes that hadn't softened in decades. You shouldn't spend one more night in that house. Mom gasped. Wait, Elias? No, he snapped. I'm done waiting. You all treated her like she's disposable, and now you're about to find out what disposable feels like. And just like that, he pulled out his phone. Grandpa Elias never raised his voice, but when he spoke, the world adjusted its volume. He tapped his phone screen, held it to his ear. David, Get the keys ready. I'm bringing her tonight. My mother stepped forward, trembling. Wait, Dad, what are you doing? You can't just. This is a misunderstanding. You misunderstood my patience, he said coldly. Everyone in the room now wore the same face, one of frozen fear. The party wasn't a party anymore. It was a funeral. For the reputation my parents had spent decades crafting. I stood there, stunned. Grandpa, what's going on? He looked me in the eye. I bought you a 2-bedroom apartment in Lakeside Heights, paid up front, full furnishing, security, garden view, private parking. It was yours the moment I wired the money. I felt sick. And they never told me? He turned to my dad. Number. They didn't. Dad's face was red now. We were going to surprise her. With what? Grandpa's voice cracked like a whip. The apartment she never saw? The money you spent? He let those words hang in the air like a guillotine. My heart raced. You gave how much? He looked at me slowly. $320,000. A knife in my chest. I asked them to keep the rest for your college loans and emergency fund. Turns out the emergency is now. My mother's hands trembled. We had expenses. Business was slow. Your son lost his job. We were. Stealing from your own daughter, he said simply. The room gasped. A few aunts retreated to the corners, pretending they weren't witnessing this train wreck. My sister Amanda snuck behind the kitchen island, her phone clearly recording. Grandpa noticed. You can send that to the lawyer too, Amanda. It'll save time. Dad tried to step in. Okay. Let's all just calm down. It's a family issue. We can work it out. You mean cover it up? Grandpa replied, turning toward the door. Number Natalie, go grab your bag. Assistant. I didn't move. You're not staying here another night, he said, walking straight to me. You'll come with me, and first thing tomorrow morning, you'll see what was supposed to be yours. But my clothes, my stuff. He placed a hand on my back. We'll buy new things. I'm done watching them pretend to be parents. My mother gasped again. You don't mean that. Oh, I mean every word, he said. My hands trembled as I walked toward the door. My parents said nothing. They didn't beg, didn't apologize. They only watched, like losing me wasn't their fear. Being exposed was. I paused at the door. You took my future and called it your backup plan. You buried me under this roof like I was a failure. You made me think I wasn't worth anything. Dad looked away. Mom's lips moved, but no words came. Grandpa opened the front door. You were never the problem, Natalie. They just didn't want to let you become something they couldn't control. The elevator doors closed. And just like that, I left behind my birthday, my family, and every lie they'd told, unaware that this was only the start. Because what I'd discover inside that apartment would rip open a secret they were willing to bury me for. The apartment didn't just exist, it gleamed. Tall ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, soft beige furniture, marble counters, a balcony that overlooked a private courtyard with a fountain that looked like something out of a painting. It didn't feel like a place to live. It felt like a place you had to earn. And somehow, it had always been mine. Welcome home, Grandpa said, handing me the key card. I clutched it tightly. I don't understand. Why would they hide this from me? He exhaled slowly and sat down on the cream sofa, removing his watch like this was just another Tuesday. Because your parents are drowning in debt. Your father took out 3 lines of credit last year, and your mother defaulted on her boutique loan 2 months ago. I knew they were desperate, but I gave them a chance. I trusted them with your future. My throat tightened. But they always said they were doing fine. He gave me a look. Your parents are actors, Natalie, not the professional kind. The survival kind. They perform comfort, success, control. All smoke and mirrors. And you, unfortunately, were their best-kept hostage. It hit me like a cold slap. I was never going to get the apartment, I whispered. They were never going to tell me. Grandpa's voice softened. Number. Because they don't see you as a person. They see you as a wallet. I looked up, shaken. Not today, he said. Not anymore. He stood and walked into the hallway, returning moments later with a man in a blazer and glasses. This is James, Grandpa said. My attorney. James nodded politely. Miss Natalie, you'll want to sit down. I did, though my legs were barely working. Grandpa leaned forward. When your grandmother passed, she left behind a trust, not just for your education, but for you, personally. It was meant to be available the moment you turned 21. I stared at him, but I never got anything. Because your father intercepted it. James opened a file folder and handed me a sheet. I read it. A signature, a forged letter of request. It wasn't my signature, but it was close. I never signed this. I know, Grandpa said calmly. We're filing charges. My breath caught. I didn't want to believe it, that my own son would do this to his daughter. But I had my doubts. So we waited, watched, collected evidence. I stared at the numbers. The trust fund had nearly $850,000 in it, most of it gone. Tears stung my eyes, but not from sadness, fury. All this time, I thought I was a burden, I said. They told me I needed to sacrifice, be grateful for whatever they gave me. They said I wasn't mature enough to handle money. James nodded. Because money would have given you freedom. They couldn't afford that. My chest burned. What happens now? Grandpa stood, slowly and deliberately. Now, we put everything on the table, all of it. We go to war. But they're my parents. They stopped being your parents the moment they stole your voice, and now you'll speak for yourself. I looked at the folder again. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about everything they'd stolen. My independence, my dignity, my self-worth. And I was getting it all back. By morning, Grandpa had filed motions in court. A financial freeze, legal notices, the beginning of the storm, and the house I grew up in. It would be the first to go. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension, the kind that sat just under the skin and made your heartbeat feel louder than it should. My parents sat on the other side of the room, flanked by their lawyer, a sweaty man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he hadn't expected this case to see daylight. My mother wore her pearls like armor. My father's jaw was locked, arms folded like he was daring the world to challenge his version of reality. But beside me sat Elias Ford, my grandfather, and next to him, James, calm, prepared, relentless. I clutched my copy of the forged letter. The judge looked over her glasses at my parents. Let's be clear, the trust fund was intended solely for Miss Ford? Yes, Your Honor, James replied. It was structured to activate on her 21st birthday. She's now 22. The funds were accessed months ago, without her consent, by these two individuals. My father stood abruptly. We didn't steal anything. She's our daughter. We were protecting her. From what? I cut in, my voice steady for the first time in years. He turned to me, surprised I'd spoken. From being independent? From knowing the truth? From having options? His eyes darkened. You think money makes you mature? Makes you better than us? I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. I think lying to your child, forging documents, and draining her future makes you a criminal? My mother gasped. Natalie, how can you— No, I snapped. You don't get to call me ungrateful. You sold off my future and smiled in my face while doing it. The judge raised her hand. Let's proceed. James laid out the timeline, the forged document, the spending trail, bank withdrawals, transfers, even credit card statements in my name I'd never seen. They used me like an ATM, and now they were exposed. I want to press charges, I said clearly, standing up. They didn't just steal money. They took years of my life, my confidence, my peace. The room fell silent. Even my father's shoulders dropped, ever so slightly. Grandpa put a hand on my back. That's my girl. The judge leaned back. I'm placing a temporary freeze on the defendant's assets. A full audit will be conducted. Based on preliminary evidence, this case will move forward. Criminal charges are now under consideration. My mother covered her face. My father didn't move. As the bailiff called the recess, they looked smaller than I'd ever seen them. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. James followed. You okay? No, I said truthfully, but I will be. Because this wasn't just revenge, it was reclamation. Everything they tried to bury, my voice, my rights, my life, I was digging back up. That night, I sat in my apartment, on my couch, eating dinner with my grandfather, the man who saw me. Do you know why I waited? He asked. Why? Because the best kind of power is the kind you earn, not what you're handed. And today you showed me you've earned every damn piece of your life back. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I never want to be that girl again. The one who begged for crumbs from people who never intended to feed her. You're not, he said. That girl died the day you stood up and said, no more. And in that silence between us, something new was born. A woman. 3 months later, the court settlement came in. And so did the headlines. Heiress of deceit, parents charged after embezzling daughter's inheritance. The news spread like gasoline met with flame. People who once whispered behind my back at family dinners now flooded my inbox with, I had no idea, and if you ever want to talk, messages. I didn't reply to a single one. The judge awarded me full restitution. Every cent taken from the trust had to be returned, including interest. The property they bought with my name was seized. My parents were banned from handling financial accounts tied to any family trust again. My father lost what remained of his business. My mother, the queen of image, vanished from her usual online life. But I didn't. Glowed. I moved. Not physically, spiritually, emotionally, permanently. With Grandpa's help, I launched something new. The Unheard Foundation. Its mission was simple. Support young adults who'd been financially controlled, manipulated, or abused by their own families. We offered legal resources, counseling, grants, real help. And the first person I hired? Amanda, my younger sister. The girl who once recorded the chaos in the living room now helped me change lives. She wasn't innocent. She'd known something was wrong. But she apologized. She meant it. I saw the fear in her eyes. The fear I used to wear. She didn't want to end up like them. I wouldn't let her. The day they tried to contact me again was unforgettable. It started with a knock. James opened the door, surprised. You have visitors. I looked up from my laptop. Who? He stepped aside. My parents stood in the hallway, thinner, older, defeated. Natalie, Mom said softly. Can we talk? Dad said nothing, just stared at the floor. I stood, heart steady. You're not supposed to be here, I said. I know, she whispered, but we lost everything. We have nowhere else. I nodded slowly. You had everything. Me, and you used me like a bank account. We were scared, she choked. Your father was spiraling, the loans, the business. We thought it was temporary, but you made it permanent. My voice cracked. You broke me. Dad looked up. We didn't mean to, but you did. They stood there, expecting, what? Mercy? A hug? Redemption? I stepped back. I forgive you, I said. My mother gasped. But that doesn't mean I want you in my life. Forgiveness isn't permission, and it's not an invitation. Dad's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Grandpa Elias appeared behind me, firm as stone. Leave. Now. They hesitated. I said leave. And they did. That night, I sat with Grandpa on the balcony. The air was crisp. The lights of the city blinked beneath us. You handled that better than I ever could have, he said. I nodded, tired but whole. I'm not angry anymore. Good. Anger fades, but strength doesn't. He raised his glass. To Natalie Ford, he said. The girl they underestimated, the woman they'll never forget. I smiled, for real this time. To taking everything back, I said. And we drank to that.